Security was already waiting for me when I stepped out of the elevator. That was the first sign something was wrong. Not the kind of wrong you explain away. The kind that tightens your chest before your brain catches up. One of them avoided my eyes. The other nodded toward the conference room like this was already over and I just hadn't realized it yet. I still walked in thinking it was a normal meeting. That's the stupid part. Badge warmed from my hand. Coffee burned my tongue on the way down the hall. The air smelled like printer toner and cleaning spray, sharp enough to sting, like someone had wiped the place down for an ending. The CEO didn't tell me to sit, didn't look surprised to see me standing there. HR was already at the table. Legal, too. Papers stacked neatly. A pen placed just right. He spoke without lifting his head. One hiring mistake from the past? That was how he framed my entire career. Then the word worthless landed. Clean. Practiced, like he'd tested it beforehand. Get out. Don't come back. No yelling, no scene. That almost made it worse. The papers slid toward me. NDA on top. Severance under it. 10 minutes. Someone from legal kept tapping the pen against the folder. Not fast. Just enough to feel like a clock. I laughed. I swear I didn't mean to. It came out small and wrong. Like my body reacting before my pride could stop it. The room shifted. Shoes scraped outside the door. Security had been there the whole time. I tried one last thing. Said the words compliance memo out loud. The one I'd sent the week before. The one nobody acknowledged. Silence answered. Thick. Intentional. My email access vanished before I even stood up. Phone buzzed once. Then froze. At the elevator. The badge flashed red. A soft beep. Polite. Final. The carpet cleaner smell hit me again. Too strong. Like they'd planned for me to disappear without residue. And here's the part I hate admitting. I almost signed. Pen in my hand. Thinking about health insurance. Thinking about being tired. Thinking about how easy it would be to stop fighting. My name is Marin Caldwell, 47 years old. The story you're about to hear is a fictional work created by the writing team at Revenge AITA. It draws inspiration from real workplace power dynamics. But all characters and events are imagined for storytelling purposes. I folded the papers instead, slid them back across the table. The pen kept tapping. Nobody reached for it. Nobody stopped me. By the time I hit the sidewalk, my phone was already lighting up with alerts that weren't meant for me. By the time I reached the sidewalk, my job was already past tense. My phone buzzed in my hand. I hadn't even unlocked the car yet. LinkedIn notification. Short, polite, position updated. No warning, no delay. Like someone had been waiting for the signal. Updated by who? I was still standing there. Keys pressed into my palm. Brain lagging behind my body. Another buzz. Email this time. Not addressed to me, I knew that right away. The tone was wrong. Too casual. Too careless. Make sure she can't access the old folders. No greeting. No signature. Just that. Old folders. That phrase sat heavier than it should have. Compliance. Audit trails. Internal notes. The boring stuff people ignore until they are desperate for it. The stuff I handled quietly for years so other people could pretend everything was fine. I got into the car and closed the door. The vinyl seat was cracked along the edge. It smelled like dust and old receipts and something faintly sour. I didn't start the engine. Just sat there. Phone balanced on my thigh. Watching notifications pile up. My company profile was gone. Calendar wiped clean. Access revoked everywhere at once. Fast. Coordinated. I texted 2 people I trusted. Not long messages. Nothing dramatic. Just a check-in. A lifeline. One never answered. The other sent a thumbs-up emoji. Nothing else. No words. No explanation. That one hurt worse than silence. Silence could still mean fear. An emoji meant distance. I scrolled back to the email, read it again, then again. This wasn't a firing. Firings are loud, messy, emotional. Someone argues. Someone explains. This felt surgical. A cleanup. My chest tightened in a way that had nothing to do with money. Losing the paycheck scared me. Sure. But this was different. This was about control. about making sure I couldn't reach back and touch anything after I was gone. I dropped the phone onto the passenger seat and stared at the windshield. People walked past. Normal day, normal traffic. Nobody knew I'd just been erased from a place I'd helped hold together. The engine finally turned over. The sound felt too loud in the quiet that followed me out of the building. I called my old mentor first. Muscle memory. The phone rang once, then went straight to voicemail. I started talking anyway. Too fast, trying to sound normal. Halfway through, I heard myself apologizing for something I didn't do. I hung up and stared at the screen like it might argue back. Next was the woman I trained for 3 years. I'd walked her through her first audit, covered for her mistakes. She answered on the third ring. Her voice dropped before the sentence finished. We were told not to talk to you. Not him. Not management. Us. The line stayed open for a second longer than it should have. I could hear her breathing. Then the call ended without goodbye. Another number lit up. A recruiter I'd worked with forever. The kind who usually joked before getting to the point. This time there was a pause. Long enough to feel deliberate. Off the record, came through the speaker. Low and careful. Your name is flagged. The word hit like a slap. Flagged. Like spam. Like malware. Something you quarantine so it doesn't spread. He didn't offer help. Didn't need to. The silence after that did enough. I ended up on the kitchen floor without remembering how I got there. Cold tile through my clothes. The refrigerator hummed too loud, like it was trying to fill the space. My phone sat in my hand while I refreshed my inbox again and again. Nothing changed. No replies. No follow-ups. No one circling back. I typed messages and deleted them. Short ones. Longer ones. Ones that sounded strong. Ones that sounded desperate. All of them stayed unsent. What landed hardest wasn't the blocked calls or the careful wording. It was the pattern, the way everyone moved at once, the way distance appeared where familiarity used to be. I set the phone face down and leaned my head back against the cabinet. The floor felt steady. That helped, even if nothing else did. When I finally stood up, the silence followed me into the next room. Interview started. Kind of. They all followed the same rhythm. Smiles first. Nods. Compliments that landed soft and floated away. You're impressive. A pause. Very experienced. The word hung there. Experienced. Heavy. Loaded. One hiring manager leaned back in his chair and squinted at my resume like it might confess something. Honestly, he said, dragging it out. You're a little outdated. I smiled. I hated myself for that reflex. Years of being agreeable kicking in at the worst time. He relaxed when I did. That told me everything about how the room worked. Another interview, different company, same pause, same careful tone. We're moving fast. Someone said, eyes already drifting to the next calendar slot. Translation landed clean. Not you. The health insurance clock ticked louder than anything else. I didn't need a reminder. The dates were burned into my head. I pulled out my phone between calls and searched for continuation coverage. Scrolled through the numbers written out in full, each one worse than the last. I laughed once. Short. Sharp. Put the phone face down like it might bite me. That night, I did something stupid. I opened the NDA again. Read the clauses slowly. The parts about silence, about penalties, about how long they expected me to disappear. My thumb hovered over the signature line, like it remembered what it felt like to hold the pen. A voice crept in while I read. Familiar. Confident. You're difficult. You don't fit anymore. You should have seen this coming. It sounded like the CEO. That scared me more than the interviews. I closed the document and stared at the screen until it dimmed. My reflection looked tired, smaller, like someone waiting to be told what came next. The next morning, an email came in from a firm I barely remembered applying to. No pleasantries, no fluff, just a request to review a broken process and tell them what I saw. I replied yes before I could talk myself out of it. The doubt didn't leave. It just stepped back, watching, waiting to see if I'd prove it right. The email was short. No logos, no enthusiasm. Just a time and a file attached. The firm didn't ask where I'd been or why I left my last job. They didn't mention the gap. They didn't ask for references. That alone felt suspicious, in a good way. The file opened slow, old system, clunky. I scanned the first page and felt my stomach drop. It was mine. Same framework, same workarounds, same ugly little shortcuts I'd built when deadlines mattered more than credit. I scrolled faster, hoping I was wrong. I wasn't. Even the naming conventions were familiar. Lazy, practical, mine. I looked up during the call and asked who designed it. A pause. Shrugging voices through the speaker. Someone said it was inherited. Some team years ago. No names. No ownership. Like it had appeared on its own. I pointed out the failure points without sugarcoating. Spoke fast. Too fast. Old habits. The room stayed quiet while I talked. Nobody interrupted. Nobody corrected me. One of the partners leaned back. Chair creaked. He didn't sound impressed. He sounded confused. Why didn't your company ever promote you? The sentence landed wrong. Not curious. Accusatory. Like he was trying to solve a problem that didn't make sense. I didn't have a clean answer. I gave the honest one. Talked about timing. Politics. Being useful instead of visible. The words felt thin even as I said them. The call ended without feedback. No promises. No praise. Just a request to send a written summary by the end of the day. I stepped outside afterward. Cold air cut through my jacket. It smelled like rain and metal and something sharp. My hands shook when I unlocked the car. For months. Every doubt had felt personal. Like I was failing some invisible test. Sitting there, gripping the steering wheel. It shifted. Just a little. The problem wasn't that I didn't know what I was doing. The problem was that I did. I kept my head down. That part came easy. I fixed what landed on my desk and ignored everything else. No posts, no announcements, no correcting anyone when they repeated the story they'd already decided was true. People sent broken things my way like they always had. Systems that stalled, reports that didn't reconcile, processes everyone tiptoed around because touching them meant accountability. I worked through them one by one. Quiet, useful, invisible again. But on my terms this time, late one night. The office was almost empty. A shared screen was still lit in a conference room I passed on the way out. Someone had forgotten to log out. I slowed down without meaning to. An email sat open. If this audit fails, the board will panic. No greeting, no signature. The tone was tight, controlled, afraid. I recognized the phrasing, the structure, the shorthand. It came from the same company I'd left. My old company. And worse than that, it referenced the same internal system I'd built years ago. The same shortcuts. The same blind spots I'd flagged and been told to stop worrying about. I closed the laptop without reading further and sat in the empty room. The air smelled like burnt coffee and warm electronics. My hands rested flat on the table. Steady. This was the moment people romanticize later. The one where you step in. Warn them. Save everyone. Become the reasonable adult in the room. I pictured the CEO's face, calm, certain, calling me a mistake without standing up. I didn't move. Days passed. Then more. The messages kept coming from my new team. Fix this. Check that. Each solved problem sharpened the contrast. Here, they listened. Here, nobody told me to disappear. Another forwarded message landed in my inbox by accident. Shorter this time. More urgent. Meeting scheduled. Lawyers mentioned. I archived it. The work continued. Quiet. Precise. And somewhere underneath it, something shifted. Not anger. Not revenge. Just clarity about who I was willing to save and who I wasn't. The first mention showed up in a trade newsletter I only skimmed out of habit. One paragraph, buried, regulatory delay, internal review, no names attached, nothing dramatic. 2 days later, my phone rang while I was reviewing a workflow map. The number wasn't saved, but I recognized the area code right away. I answered without thinking. Her voice came fast and low. The way people talk when they're already in trouble and trying to outrun it. They're scrambling. She said, I didn't need clarification. I hadn't heard from her since the day I was escorted out. She used to manage calendars and smooth over messes before anyone important noticed them. If she was calling me, things were already loud inside. She stopped herself mid-breath, like she'd said too much. Then the line went dead. I stared at the phone for a second longer than necessary and set it face down. My chest didn't tighten. That was new. No spike of panic. No urge to explain myself to anyone who wasn't listening. That afternoon, the building security desk called upstairs. The guard sounded polite in that careful way people use when they don't know where they stand. "Ma'am," he said, then paused. "Someone is here asking for you." I waited. "He says he knows you." I told him I'd be down in a minute. In the elevator, my reflection looked steady. Tired, but steady. My hands didn't shake. I noticed that and almost smiled. 3 years earlier, and I couldn't walk past that man without adjusting my tone, my posture, my words. The lobby doors slid open. He was standing near the desk, jacket still on, phone in his hand like he might need it for cover, smaller than I remembered, not weaker, just unsure. The kind of uncertainty you only wear when you're used to being obeyed and suddenly aren't. He looked up when he saw me. Relief flashed first, then calculation. I didn't slow down. Didn't rush either. Stopped a few feet away and waited. He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. Marin. He said my name like it was a favor, like time had passed and changed the math. I nodded once. Not an invitation. Not a greeting. The power in the room shifted without either of us touching it. He looked smaller up close. Not physically, just compressed, like the air had been let out slowly and no one noticed until now. The voice came softer than I remembered. Careful, measured, the kind you use when you're stepping onto ice you didn't know was thin. "We made a mistake." The words hung there. I didn't rush to fill the space. I watched his hands instead. One wrapped around his phone. The other kept smoothing the edge of his jacket like it needed reassurance. Silence does things to people who are used to control. His shoulders shifted. He leaned in, then caught himself and leaned back. Tried again. He talked. Regulators first, then deadlines, then pressure from the board, each sentence shorter than the last, like he was testing which version might land. Nothing landed. The cologne reached me when he stepped closer. Too strong. Same brand, same mistake. I remembered thinking once that it filled rooms before he did. He paused, swallowed, changed tactics. "We need you, not the company, not the team. You." I kept my hands still at my sides. Didn't nod, didn't shake my head. I let the word need sit where he'd put it. Heavy. Exposed. A security guard cleared his throat behind the desk, a subtle reminder of where we were and who was watching. The CEO glanced back, annoyed, then returned his focus to me. The calculation came back into his eyes. Quick and practiced, he started again. Slower, mentioned timelines, consequences, how fast things could get ugly if the wrong people started asking the right questions. I stepped half a pace to the side, just enough to change the angle between us, just enough to break the alignment he was trying to rebuild. He stopped talking. For the first time since I'd known him, he waited for permission to continue. I didn't give it. The lobby felt different then. Not louder, not tense, just rearranged. Like the center of gravity had moved and everyone felt it, even if they couldn't explain why. I turned toward the elevators and pressed the button. The light came on immediately. Behind me, his phone buzzed. He didn't look at it. Neither did I. I told him I would help. Relief hit his face instantly. Too fast. Like he'd already written the ending in his head and just needed me to read my line. I didn't rush to finish the sentence. Let that relief settle. Let it get comfortable. "Not you," I added. "The team. The systems." The air shifted. He straightened like he'd misheard me on purpose. His mouth opened, closed, tried again with a softer angle. A story about loyalty, about shared history, about how much pressure he was under. I didn't interrupt. I didn't need to. The version of me who used to fill gaps wasn't standing there anymore. The board call happened that night. Not in a room I was invited to. Not on a line he controlled. Decisions rolled downhill fast once they started. Compliance risk, operational exposure, names quietly removed from agendas. He wasn't on the call. When the outcome reached him, He came looking for me again, this time without the jacket, without the cologne. His voice cracked on my name like it might still unlock something. "You're doing this to me," he said. I shook my head once. Small, final. This was already happening. I said, "I just didn't stop it." That was the moment he understood. Not the loss of authority, not the demotion, the exclusion. Being treated like a variable instead of a decision maker. He stared at me like I'd crossed a line he thought only he was allowed to see. I stepped past him, close enough to feel the heat of his anger. He didn't move, didn't call after me, didn't reach. The hallway felt longer than usual, but lighter. Like something heavy had been set down and no one asked me to pick it back up. Behind me, voices rose. Lawyers, assistants. Someone already rewriting the narrative. I kept walking. The elevator doors closed without resistance. The headlines were boring. Regulatory reshuffle. Executive departure. Interim leadership announced. No drama. No names in bold. That felt right. Loud endings belong to people who still need applause. People kept asking how it felt to win. Colleagues. A cousin I hadn't talked to in years. Even someone from my old team. Testing the water with a casual message. I never found a clean answer. Winning wasn't the word. Surviving didn't fit either. Mostly, it felt quiet. Like finally putting something heavy down and realizing how long I'd been carrying it. I still think about the NDA sometimes. About how close I came to signing. About the smile that slipped out in that conference room before I knew what was happening. That version of me doesn't embarrass me anymore. She did what she knew how to do at the time. She tried to keep the peace. She tried to stay employed. She tried to believe the rules applied evenly. Some days I think I waited too long. Let things rot while I stood back and watched. Other days, I know I waited exactly long enough. Long enough to stop needing their approval. Long enough to see clearly who deserved saving and who didn't. I wasn't worthless. That word doesn't stick anymore. It slides off like it never belonged to me in the first place. I wasn't a mistake either. I was useful until I became inconvenient. There's a difference. I understand that now. I didn't replace him. I didn't take his chair. I didn't need to. My work kept going. The system stabilized. The people who actually carried the weight kept their jobs. That was enough. I'm still deciding who I am without that old title attached to my name. Some days that scares me. Other days it feels like breathing for the first time in years. Here's the life lesson I earned the hard way. Power doesn't come from being indispensable. It comes from knowing when to step back and let the truth do its job. And dignity isn't something anyone can give you or take away. It's something you keep by choosing yourself, even when it costs you everything else. Apologize to my son, or you're off the project. The CEO said, calm as if he were reading a meeting agenda, not ending my career in front of a room that had already decided I was guilty. The conference room was full when I walked in. HR on one side, legal on the other. His son leaned back in his chair like this was entertainment. The air was thick with his cologne, too sweet, too confident, and it made my stomach turn before anyone spoke. The CEO didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He had the room. He always did. You embarrassed him, he said, nodding once toward his son. Not a question, a verdict. I opened my mouth to explain one sentence. Maybe two, but he lifted a hand and cut me off without looking at me. That small gesture landed harder than shouting. Everyone watched me like I'd already lost. I felt heat in my face and that familiar urge to smooth things over. I've done that my whole life. Fix it. Absorb it. Move on. My name is Maribel Knox. I am 38 years old. The thought came to me right then. Sharp and useless. Like it should mean something in a room where it meant nothing at all. Apologize, he said again. Still calm, still public. Or you're off the project. His son smiled, just a twitch. Like he knew the ending. No, I said, it came out before I could dress it up or soften it. Not loud, not brave, just there. Silence hit the room and stayed. Even HR looked up from their notes. The CEO finally turned his head and looked straight at me. For a second, I wondered if I'd imagined the word leaving my mouth. I swear, If I'd blinked first, I would have apologized. The story you're reading is a work created by the writing team at Revenge AITA, inspired by real workplace dynamics but told as a fictional account. The CEO's expression didn't change, but something shifted. Control slipped a fraction. I felt it, like a loose floorboard underfoot. He expected fear. He got resistance. And that resistance hung there, ugly and undeniable. As I stood in a room that had already chosen sides and realized I just made a mistake that couldn't be walked back, he didn't fire me. That was the first surprise. The CEO leaned back in his chair like he'd won something already. "You're emotional," he said, tapping the table once. "This project doesn't need that energy right now." I stayed quiet, not because I agreed, because I was waiting. "We're going to sideline you for a bit," he continued. "Let cooler heads handle continuity." His eyes flicked to HR, then to legal, like this had been rehearsed. Temporary. His son didn't look at me. He didn't have to. He had the room again. HR slid a folder across the table. "For continuity," she said. Voice neutral, like she was asking for a badge lanyard. "We'll need your admin access transferred today." I felt it in my chest before my brain caught up. That small tightening, the one that usually means fight or run. "Okay," I said. Everyone paused. HR blinked. The CEO's mouth curved just slightly, like he'd expected resistance and would please not to get it. Immediately, legal asked, "Yes," I said. "I'll do it now." I didn't explain anything. I didn't warn them. I didn't say the system they were so proud of was being held together by a layer they'd never bothered to learn about. I didn't say the optimization his son bragged about was a mess that only stayed upright because I was quietly compensating for it every day. Why would I followed the process perfectly. That's what hurt them. At my desk, HR hovered while I logged in. I could feel their eyes on my hands. The badge scanner let out a sharp beep when I tapped it, louder than usual, like it wanted attention. I transferred access, step by step, clean, legal, documented. "You're being very cooperative." HR said. "I know," I replied. Behind us, I heard the CEO laugh softly. "See," he said, "this is how professionals handle conflict." I finished, logged out, and stood up. My access was gone. Every safety net tied to my credentials went with it. As I handed the badge back, a thought crossed my mind. Uninvited and steady, what breaks first when the only person compensating steps aside? I didn't look back at the conference room. I walked toward the elevators while legal whispered urgently into a phone, and the CEO's son started talking too fast, already planning changes. The doors slid shut before anyone noticed I was gone. No one stopped me as I packed. That was the second surprise. A couple of engineers pretended to be very busy. One glanced up, then looked away fast, like eye contact might get him in trouble. Someone cleared their throat behind me and didn't say my name. I slid my notebook into my bag, then my charger. Last thing was the laptop. It felt heavier than usual, like it knew something I wasn't saying out loud. "Are you taking that?" A voice asked. It was the project manager. Not angry, just careful. "Not with me," I said. I walked back to the executive floor. The CEO's door was open. He was standing, phone pressed to his ear, nodding like the call was already going his way. I set the laptop on his desk, right in the center. I wrote the note slow, so my hand wouldn't shake. "Open it. And look." I didn't encrypt anything, didn't wipe a single file. I just logged in once, long enough to do one thing, then logged out of my personal admin account. Clean exit. The laptop fan whined when I closed the lid. A thin, tired sound, like it was relieved to stop pretending. Leaving something behind, the CEO asked, finally covering the phone. "Yes," I said. "Everything you said you didn't need." He stared at me, searching for a crack. "You're making a mistake," he said. "You don't walk away from work like this." I shrugged. I followed the process. His son appeared in the doorway, smile already forming. "She'll be back," he said. "They always come back." I looked at him, really looked, and felt something settle in my chest. If silence looks like surrender, why does it make people so nervous when you stop explaining yourself? "Good luck," I said. and meant it in the most literal way. The elevator ride down was quiet. When the doors opened, my badge still worked. One last beep. Then I stepped outside and my phone buzzed once. Sharp and sudden, somewhere above me. A system lost the only permission that had been keeping it steady, and nobody inside knew it yet. He called it an optimization. Like the word alone made it harmless. "We're shaving milliseconds," he said, tapping the screen with his knuckle. "Clients want speed. This gives it to them." I leaned closer and felt my jaw tighten. "You cut the integrity check." He didn't look up. "Temporarily. That check exists for a reason." I said, "You're opening the door to duplicate transactions." He laughed, short and sharp. "You worry too much." "It's not worry," I said. "It's compliance." He finally turned to me then. Smile thin. "You engineers love hiding behind rules. This is business." I pointed at the code. "If 2 requests hit at the same time, the system won't know which one to trust. We'll monitor it." He said, "Relax. I can't sign off on this." I said, "You don't need to." He replied, "I already did." That was the moment. Not loud, not dramatic, just the quiet click of him stepping past me. I stayed late that night. I didn't tell anyone. I built a layer under his changes that absorbed the collision before it could surface. It rerouted duplicates, logged everything, masked the violation just enough to keep the system alive. It only worked if my admin key was active. I knew that when I wrote it. At 2 a.m, the coffee on my desk burned down to nothing and the smell stuck to my clothes. I documented every patch, every override, every approval with his name on it, clean notes, timestamps, no opinions. He stopped by once, saw the graphs holding steady. "See," he said, "problem solved." "For now," I said. He smirked. "That's your job." I told myself I'd remove the layer once he learned. He never did. If faster means ignoring the line that keeps money from duplicating itself, when does it stop being optimization and start being a crime the next morning? He pushed another change without telling me. The system held, barely, my inbox filled with alerts only I could see. Each one a warning I swallowed. By the end of the week, I realized the truth: the platform wasn't stable. It was leaning on me. And the moment I stepped away, it would fall exactly the way he designed it to. I wasn't in the room, but I knew the order of things because the system always tells the truth. The laptop came online. 1 second of quiet. Then the dashboard lit up red. "Why is this offline?" the CEO asked. Legal didn't answer right away. Fingers hit the keys. The mechanical clicks carried through the open door, sharp and fast, like panic trying to sound professional. "Integrity layer is disabled." Someone said, "Was that intentional?" "No," the CEO said, too quickly. She wouldn't. "Here," legal cut in. Scroll back. The clicks slowed. Stopped. "What's that?" the CEO asked. "A comment block." Legal said, "It's not hidden." "Read it." He said. There was a pause. I imagined the screen, the cursor, my name sitting there like it had been waiting. Legal cleared her throat. "It says this system will collapse due to the optimization approved by project director." She hesitated, then said his name. "I have patched it 14 times. There will not be a 15th. Silence pressed in. "Is that real?" the CEO asked. "It's time-stamped," Legal said. "Signed." He turned. Slow. Like moving too fast might break something else. "Did you know about this?" His son swallowed. "She said she'd handle it." "She said it would fail?" the CEO asked. "She said she was watching it." His son replied. "She always watched it." The keyboard started again. Faster now. Someone pulled logs. Someone else said audit trail like it was a curse. I followed the updates from my phone, one alert after another stacking up. I'd written that comment after the 14th patch. Hand steady, heart not. I remember thinking it felt final, like a receipt you keep in case someone pretends they already paid, if the warning was sitting there the whole time. Clear and signed. What exactly were they hoping would protect them? "Call her," the CEO said. "Should we?" Legal asked. "Yes," he snapped. "Now." The dashboard kept flashing. Integrity checks failed in sequence. Clean and documented. Somewhere between the second alert and the third, the CEO's voice dropped, lost its edge, and for the first time all day, he wasn't giving orders. He was asking questions, and no one in the room had an answer. The call came fast, sharp, like it expected obedience. "We need you back on the bridge," the CEO said. No greeting, no name. "This is urgent. I'm not on the project." I said. A pause, breathing. Then, "Use her laptop," he told someone else. Not me. I stayed on the line. I wanted to hear it. Keys clattered. Someone cursed under their breath. Another voice said, "I'm in." Then quieter. "No, I'm not." "What do you mean you're not?" the CEO snapped. "It's locked," it said. "Admin prompt won't elevate." "Override it. I can't." "Legal," the CEO said. "Access is tied to a personal identity." Legal replied. "Not transferable. Use the backup." There isn't one. The room went loud all at once. Chairs scraping, papers, the son's voice rising. "This is ridiculous. Just reset it. You can't reset what you don't own." Legal said. "Don't lecture me," he shot back. "Fix it." The air conditioning cut off mid-argument. The sudden quiet made every word land harder. "Who designed it this way?" the CEO asked. No one answered. "What do you mean?" "No one," he said. "There's always another admin." "There isn't," IT said. "There was one." My phone vibrated with alerts. Clean and merciless. Integrity checks failing in sequence. Each one documented, each one patient. "What does power do when it hits a locked door?" "Call her," the son said. "She'll unlock it." "I already tried," the CEO said. His voice had changed. Thinner. "She's not answering." "Then wait," the son said. "She'll cave." "She hasn't," Legal said. "And the logs are rolling." The CEO raised his voice for the first time. Not to command. To push. It didn't work. The system didn't flinch. Another alert landed. Then another. I watched longer than I should have. Watching this felt wrong. I didn't look away. "Contain it," the CEO said. "Softer now? Buy us time. We're out of time." Legal replied. The line went dead. My phone kept buzzing. Each vibration a new failure stepping forward, asking to be acknowledged, and not waiting for permission. I didn't raise my voice when I warned him. That's the part people always get wrong. We were standing over his screen. Same setup as always. Same cologne. Same lazy smirk like the system owed him loyalty. I pointed line by line. Slow. So he couldn't pretend he missed anything. This part assumes the transaction resolves once. I said, "If it hits twice, the balance won't reconcile." He cut me off with a laugh. "You're catastrophizing." "It's not a theory," I said. "It's math." He leaned back in his chair. "This is why you're not leadership," he said. "You get stuck on edge cases." I stared at him for a second too long. "Those edge cases move real money." He waved a hand. "I'll sign off. If something breaks, we'll handle it." That was the moment I should have walked. I didn't. I opened my laptop and started building a patch instead. Later, Legal found the emails. I know because one of them forwarded me the thread by accident. My warning, time-stamped, his response below it. Short, confident, approved, signature intact. He acknowledged the risk, Legal said on the call. Not accusing, just stating facts. And still proceeded. Another voice added. "Yes," Legal replied. And she documented every mitigation. There was a pause. The kind that means someone just realized which side of the table they're on. I stayed because rent doesn't care about ethics. That's the truth nobody likes. I stayed because I could fix it. Because I thought I was preventing damage. Because I believed competence would eventually matter more than entitlement. At what point does helping someone cross into making their mistakes survivable? The call shifted tone after that. Less blame. More careful words. Someone asked about my contract. Someone else mentioned liability. I didn't say much. I didn't have to. When the line disconnected, another alert hit my phone. Not loud, not dramatic. Just another confirmation that the system was doing exactly what it had been warned it would do, and that the consequences were finally moving out of my inbox and into theirs. The servers stayed up. That confused them. They're still processing, someone said on the call, like that meant safety. Latency is within tolerance. That doesn't matter anymore. Legal replied. Her voice was tight, controlled. Insurance just pulled coverage. What do you mean pulled? The CEO snapped. I mean voided, she said. Effective immediately. Another voice cut in. Compliance flagged potential fraud exposure. Duplicate transaction risk. That's hypothetical. The son said, too fast. Nothing actually happened. The risk is documented. Legal said, and acknowledged. My phone wouldn't stop vibrating on the table. One alert after another. Not outages, not crashes, emails, notices, cold things that don't blink. Clients freezing funds. Someone said, all pending transfers. That's not their call, the CEO said. It is now, legal replied. They cited material uncertainty. A pause. Then another voice joined. Lower, older. The board is convening. When the CEO asked, now, they can't. He stopped himself. Swallowed. I need access. You don't have it. Legal said. They locked you out. Silence spread across the line. Not dramatic. Final. My phone buzzed again. Board calendar invite. Emergency session. The CEO wasn't on it. If the system was still running, still obedient, still doing its job, how did everything around it start collapsing anyway? I built this company. The CEO said, it sounded like a plea. And you signed those approvals? Legal said, I trusted him. The CEO said, quieter now. That trust is on record. She replied, I didn't feel happy. Just hollow. Like something had been removed instead of destroyed. The call fractured after that. Smaller conversations spinning off. Damage control. Blame shifting hands too fast to stick. I sat there and watched the notifications stack up. Each one stripping another layer of authority away from a man who still thought power lived inside the servers. My phone buzzed again. A new number this time. I didn't recognize it. I let it ring once. Twice. Then I picked up. Is this a bad time? The voice asked. I looked at the number again. Private? Seattle area code. It's fine. I said, we were told not to contact you. He said, but we disagreed. I waited. Silence does work when you let it. You were the reason we stayed. He said, not the platform, not the leadership. I felt my coffee go cold in my hand. I hadn't noticed it was still there. You trusted them? I said, we trusted you. He corrected. Your reports, your responses, the way things didn't break when they should have. Another voice joined the line. Softer. We need to move fast. Move where I asked. Away, she said. Completely. There it was. Clean. No pretending. They didn't ask if I could help fix the old system. They asked if I would lead the migration out of it. Full separation. New infrastructure. New controls. My name on the authority line. If we do this, I said, your current provider won't survive. We know, the first voice said. That's not your responsibility. I stared at the screen, watching condensation slide down the cup. I'd imagined this call 100 different ways. None of them felt like this. If the only reason a company still exists is because one person keeps choosing to stay quiet, what happens when that person stops choosing it? What are your terms? He asked. I told them. Fewer meetings, full access, no back channel approvals. Everything documented. Agreed, he said without hesitation. They sent the draft while we were still talking. Clean language, no traps. I read it once. Then again, my phone buzzed with another message from the CEO. I didn't open it. If you're asking whether I feel good about this, I said, I don't. We're not asking that, she replied. We're asking if you'll lead. I closed my laptop. Yes, I said, I will. The line went quiet for a second. Then relief. Not celebration. Relief. I hung up and finally set the coffee down. It tasted awful now. I didn't bother reheating it. I opened a new document and typed the first line of a migration plan, knowing exactly who would feel it first and that this time, I wouldn't be there to soften the impact. The CEO called 3 times that morning. I let the phone ring every time. Not to punish him. I just didn't have anything left to say that would matter. A message came through instead. Short, stripped of authority. We need to talk. I didn't reply. By the end of the week, his name was gone from internal threads. Meetings canceled without explanation. Legal sent one final notice confirming my contractor status and releasing me from any remaining obligations. Clean, precise, over. His son vanished faster. LinkedIn profile locked. Email bounced. No farewell message. No statement. Just absence. The company folded quietly. No headlines. No dramatic implosion. Clients left in orderly waves. Staff reassigned or laid off. The building kept its lights on for a while, like it was pretending nothing had changed. I started fresh the next Monday. New contract. New scope. New authority line that ended with my name instead of someone else's ego. I opened a new laptop, and the keyboard sounded different. Sharper. Like it expected me to mean what I typed. There was no victory speech. No moment where I felt tall. I took the bus home that night because my car was still in the shop. It rained. The bag with my old notebooks tore at the corner, and I had to hold it closed with one hand the whole ride. I won, but it didn't feel cinematic. It felt quiet. Settled. Here's the lesson I'm taking with me if you keep fixing problems that belong to someone else. They stop being mistakes and start being expectations. The only way to end that cycle is to step out of it completely, even when it costs you comfort. Thanks for staying with this story. If any part of it hit close to home, I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more stories about boundaries, work, and choosing yourself when it's uncomfortable, you know where to find me. The praise hadn't even finished echoing around the table when the trap snapped shut. The CEO's voice was still warm, still polished, still carrying that tone she used when she wanted the room to remember who held the leash. She was talking about compliance, about discipline, about how rare it was to find someone who understood federal standards without needing their hand held. Heads nodded. A few people smiled in my direction. The kind of smile that comes right before a promotion announcement. Then the temperature changed. Her chair slid back just enough to make the sound everyone hears when something official is about to happen. A thin folder appeared on the table. Not tossed, placed, careful, deliberate. This won't take long, she said. Already standing. We're conducting an unscheduled internal security verification. The words landed heavier than they should have. Legal glanced down. The board stopped shifting. Someone near the window closed their laptop without being asked. She continued. Calm as ever. Regulators. Irregular access out of an abundance of caution. Her hand lifted and turned toward me. Palm open. Please hand over your laptop. A few seconds passed. Not dramatic. Just long enough for everyone to look at me and wait for a reaction. My name is Marin Caldwell. I am 48 years old. The thought came to me the same way a safety check does when something starts going wrong. Automatic. Grounding. I noticed my heartbeat before I noticed my hands moving. I slid the laptop across the table. No argument. No hesitation. That seemed to surprise her more than anything else. She pulled it toward herself. Already talking about protocol, about transparency, about cooperation. The confidence was still there when she flipped it over. It drained out of her face as soon as she read the sticker. Property of the U.S. government classified. The room didn't react all at once. It fractured. Someone inhaled sharply. Another person pushed their chair back too fast. The CEO stared at the words like they might rearrange themselves if she waited long enough. The door opened before she could recover. Two men stepped inside. No rush. No raised voices. Jackets plain. Badges visible just long enough to register. They didn't look at me first. Which one of you authorized the seizure? No one answered. I stayed seated. Hands folded. The laptop sat between us like a line that couldn't be crossed back over. This story is a work of fiction created by the writing team at Revenge AITA. The CEO finally spoke, but the control was gone. Her voice landed flat, stripped of the authority it had carried minutes earlier. The men listened, took notes. One of them glanced at the sticker again, then back at her, and as the weight of what she had just invited into her own boardroom began to settle, One thought cut through everything else in my head. Sharp and unavoidable, why would a CEO invite federal scrutiny into her own boardroom? No one told me to stand. No one told me to leave. But for the first time since the meeting began, the balance in the room had shifted. And everyone knew it. The email went out before I reached the elevator. I didn't see it directly. I felt it. Phones lighting up. Chairs shifting. The quiet hum that follows a message no one wants to be associated with. Legal stood first. Not toward me away. A quick nod to security. Already positioned near the door like this had been rehearsed. No one touched my arm, but the space around me tightened. The way it does when people don't want to be seen standing too close. Standard procedure, someone muttered, not looking at me. I stepped into the hallway with my bag still on my shoulder and nothing in my hands. No laptop, no paperwork, no explanation. By the time we reached the lobby, the board had it. The wording was careful. Potential compliance breach identified. Proactive containment measures enacted. My name wasn't highlighted, but it didn't need to be. In a room full of executives, silence works faster than accusation. I caught a glimpse of the CEO through the glass wall of the conference room. She was already on another call, posture relaxed. One hand resting on the table like she'd just finished something unpleasant but necessary. Security slowed near the exit, not to stop me, to make sure everyone saw me leaving. A familiar face from finance glanced up, then back down at his phone. Another turned her body slightly. Like proximity itself carried risk, I didn't blame them. The story had already chosen its shape. Outside, one of the agents stepped closer. Voice low, professional. You're not being detained. Not cleared either. The words hung there. Balanced just enough to keep me steady and off balance at the same time. That's when it clicked. This wasn't about protecting systems or following protocol. This was about timing. About getting their version out first, locking it into records, making anything that came after sound offensive. If the accusation arrived before the facts, who would bother waiting for the rest? My phone vibrated again. Another internal message. Then another. The narrative was already moving without me. The agent nodded toward the building. We'll be in touch. I believed him. And I believed the CEO understood something else just as clearly. Whoever controls the opening line controls everything that follows. I walked away with my back straight and my hands empty, knowing the real pressure hadn't even started yet. They didn't start with questions. They started with folders. One of them slid a thin stack across the table. Not toward me, but just close enough that I could see the header, internal summary, timeline already drafted. My name appeared twice, both times attached to words like access and exposure. This is where we are, the man across from me said, tapping the page with his knuckle. We're trying to determine scope. The woman beside him watched my hands instead of my face. People do that when they're deciding whether you're a problem or a process. You're treating me like the variable. I said, keeping my voice even. No denial. No reassurance. We're treating you like a point of failure. That landed harder than an accusation. Failures don't get defended. They get isolated. Another page appeared. Access logs, timestamps, cleanly formatted, too clean. The kind of document that looks finished before the work is done. This narrative came in early, the woman added. Flipping to the next sheet. From your company. Early. That word mattered. It meant the story had been framed before anyone asked who benefited. They were very cooperative, the man said. Helpful. I leaned back, letting the chair creak just enough to fill the silence. Helpful doesn't mean accurate. He didn't disagree. He didn't agree either. We're not here to litigate internal politics. There it was. Not truth. Closure. If justice was just a spreadsheet, who decided which row got deleted? The woman finally met my eyes. Cases like this don't stay open long. Someone always wants them closed. My throat tightened. But my mind stayed clear. Someone. Not something. Not evidence. A person. I looked down at the logs again. At the neat alignment of blame. At how easily a human being fit into a column. You already know who they're pointing at. I said. Neither of them corrected me. The man gathered the folders, stacked them consideration flat. We'll need you available. For what? I asked, already knowing the answer. In case we need to clarify responsibility, they stood. The chair legs scraped back in unison. Practiced? The door opened before I reached it. As I stepped into the hallway, the weight settled fully this time. Not fear, calculation. I wasn't being asked to help them understand what happened. I was being positioned in case they needed the case to end. They brought me back in when finance and technology were both present, like a show of balance. 2 chairs angled toward me, 1 folder each. No laptops on the table this time. The man from finance didn't bother easing in. He slid a page across. These access logs line up with your credentials. The technology lead leaned forward. Fingers laced. Same pattern across 3 systems. Temporary workarounds were approved to meet deadlines. Approved. The words sat there, waiting to be claimed. Across the table, the CEO's voice came through the speaker, clipped and careful. Marin suggested the workaround. I asked for confirmation to keep operations moving. I felt the shift immediately. Not an accusation, a delegation. Responsibility moved without changing hands. I looked at the logs again. The entries were real. Dates correct. Timestamps clean. Too clean. The gaps were evenly spaced, like someone had decided where the story should pause. You filtered these, I said, keeping my eyes on the page. No one argued. The technology lead exhaled through his nose, a habit he'd never managed to break under pressure. They reflect relevant activity. Relevant to what? I asked, finally looking up. To the inquiry. That was the tell. Not accuracy, relevance. My mind slid backward without warning, not to panic but to process. Years earlier, during a rushed federal audit no one remembered fondly, I'd added redundancy no one asked for, a parallel audit trail, mirrored and dull, buried under legacy storage rules. Fully compliant, painfully boring. The kind of thing people forgot because it never made headlines. The CEO's voice tightened slightly. Is there something you'd like to add if justice was being assembled from selected facts? What if the evidence everyone feared wasn't on the laptop at all? I closed the folder and pushed it back across the table. These logs show activity. They don't show sequence. The technology lead frowned. The finance chair shifted. There's a secondary trail, I continued. Redundant, archived. It captures the same actions without editorial filtering. Silence, not confusion. Calculation. The speaker clicked. The CEO didn't respond right away. I can show you where it lives. I said, if you're actually interested in how the system behaved. The man from finance stood, already reaching for his phone. The technology lead followed him out without looking back. The line went dead. I stayed seated, pulse steady now, knowing the pressure had just moved somewhere else and it wasn't finished moving yet. They brought coffee. That was how I knew it was going to be a long night. The cups landed near the folders. Untouched, one of the agents rubbed his eyes, then pushed a fresh page across the table. Same logs, same framing, more confidence this time, like repetition might turn assumption into fact. You understand why this looks bad, he said, leaning back. It looks incomplete, I replied, tapping the margin where the timestamps broke pattern, which is different. The woman across from him tilted her head. You're saying the logs are wrong? I'm saying they're curated. That earned a pause. Not disbelief, interest. Pressure crept in sideways. Subtle. A mention of timelines? A reminder that open cases attract attention. That attention demands resolution. I stopped listening to the tone and started listening to the process. They weren't hunting a villain. They were hunting closure. I leaned forward. Can I ask how you verified integrity? The man hesitated. Standard review. Against which baseline? Another pause, longer this time. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folded diagram, edges worn. When we aligned to NIST and CMMC, we mirrored activity across a secondary archive. Legacy format? Low priority? Nobody checks it because it's boring. The woman's pen froze mid-note. You're saying there's another trail. I'm saying there's a complete one. The room shifted. Chairs angled closer. The coffee finally got touched. What would you hide if you knew no one ever checked the backups? I kept my voice flat. It logs sequence, not just access, no filtering, no optimization. The man glanced at the clock. Where? On a system scheduled for decommission. Still compliant. Still live. Silence stretched. Thick now with possibility. If it matches, he said slowly, this changes scope. It changes responsibility. I corrected. They stood together this time. No choreography, no practiced unity, just urgency. As they reached the door, the woman looked back once. We'll need you close. I nodded, already feeling the pressure migrate again. The night wasn't about proving innocence anymore. It was about what the system was about to remember and who it would remember it for. The confirmation came quietly. Not an announcement, not an apology, just a change in posture. The agent who had been pacing stopped mid-step and looked at the screen again. The other leaned closer, shoulder nearly touching mine now, like the distance between us had finally collapsed. This wasn't pulled from the device. He muttered, more to himself than anyone else. I didn't smile. I didn't nod. I watched the realization take shape. They had followed the trail I pointed to. The old archive. The forgotten storage layer that still hummed along because no one bothered to shut it down. The system that never asked permission to remember. So the laptop, the woman said slowly, was synchronized. It always was. She looked up. And taking it didn't stop anything. No, I said. It just made someone feel safer. The room tightened. Phones came out. Messages were typed and erased before being sent. One of them stepped aside. Voice low, tense, choosing words carefully. She focused on the wrong asset. I felt the shift then. Not relief. Leverage. What if the thing everyone fought over was just a decoy? The man at the screen swore under his breath. There's more here than we were told. Of course there is, I said. No one builds shortcuts without hiding the long way around. The woman straightened. This system was marked inactive. Abandoned, I corrected. Not erased. Another pause. Longer. He tapped the table once. Sharp. If someone tried to clean this up, they'd leave fingerprints. I finished. A door opened down the hall. Voices bled through, clipped, urgent. Someone was moving faster now. The woman turned to me, eyes steady. If this archive exists, someone knew about it. Yes, and didn't tell us. Yes. She closed her notebook without writing anything else. Then we're done here for the moment. As they stepped out, I stayed seated, pulse finally catching up to the night. The laptop hadn't protected me. It had distracted them. And somewhere upstairs, someone was realizing that the system they thought they controlled had already spoken. The call didn't come to me. It came through the glass. Raised voices. A door closing too hard. Someone saying my name like it was already part of a sentence they regretted starting. I was still in the room when the technology lead rushed past. Phone pressed to his ear. Face tight. He didn't look at me. That told me everything. Moments later, the CEO's voice cut through the hallway. Sharp and controlled in the way it only got when she thought speed could outrun consequence. I don't care how long it takes. Pull the logs. All of them. Anything older than the last compliance cycle. A pause. Short. Dangerous. No, not flagged. Everything. She hung up before anyone could argue. The agents exchanged a look. Not surprise, confirmation. She's moving. One of them said, already typing. She thinks she is. I replied. The woman stopped beside me. If she deletes, she can't? I said, not what matters. They didn't ask how I knew. They were past that. Another message came in. Quiet, efficient. The kind that doesn't announce itself. The mirrored data had finished indexing. Timestamps intact, commands preserved. The order to purge logged twice. Once where it was issued and once where it shouldn't have existed at all. How far would you go to erase a mistake that could not be undone? The man closest to the door exhaled slowly. That just turned negligence into obstruction. Phones were out now. Directions given. Floors secured. The CEO stepped into view at the end of the hall, moving fast. Expression set. She saw us and stopped short. Recalculating in real time. No one spoke. She straightened, chin lifting. Authority by muscle memory. One of the agents stepped forward, badge already visible. We need you to come with us. Her mouth opened, then closed again. The hallway felt smaller, tighter, like the building itself had decided to listen. I didn't move. I didn't need to. Power doesn't disappear all at once. It slips. And once it does, there's nothing left to hold it up. The building went quiet in a way I'd never heard before. Not empty, not calm, just paused, like everyone was waiting for permission to breathe again and no one knew who could give it. Doors stayed open. Phones stopped ringing. A board member stood near the elevators, hands folded, eyes fixed on nothing in particular. When the agents moved past him, he stepped aside without being asked. "This floor is restricted," one of them announced. Voice steady, loud enough to travel. No one argued. Key cards were collected. Access screens blinked and went dark. A technician froze mid-step when his terminal locked him out, hands still hovering like he might be able to convince it otherwise. The CEO was escorted out through the side corridor. No speech. No protest. She didn't look at me as she passed, which felt deliberate. Some people can't face the last person who saw the truth arrive before they did. A man from legal cleared his throat, then stopped himself. Another board member lowered into a chair. Slowly, like gravity had just remembered him. One of the agents approached me. "You're cleared." The words were clean, final, no qualifiers. I nodded, not trusting my voice yet. What does it mean to survive when everything around you collapses quietly? The agent handed me a single sheet. Confirmation, process complete. I didn't read it. I folded it once and slid it into my bag. No one clapped. No one thanked me. That was fine. The absence felt appropriate. As I headed toward the stairs, the silence followed, heavier now, pressing in. Behind me, system stayed dark. Conversation stalled. And a company waited to find out who it was without the person who had been holding it together. I didn't look back. There was still one conversation left to have, and it wasn't going to be easy. She waited until the hallway emptied. I was halfway to the exit when I heard my name, quieter than before, stripped of the authority she used to wear like armor. I stopped, not because she asked, but because I wanted to hear how far she was willing to go. "This doesn't have to keep moving," she said. Her hands were steady now. Too steady. "We can close this." She stepped closer, careful to keep her voice low. "No witnesses, no record. There's a settlement ready. Generous, immediate. A pause, then the real hook. And a silence agreement." I looked at her face and saw calculation where confidence used to live. "You're offering money for time." I said, "You don't have much of either." Her jaw tightened. "You've already won. Why push it?" The question sat between us, heavy. What price would buy your silence if you'd already won? She reached into her folder and held it out, not touching me with it, just close enough to make the offer real. You walk away clean, comfortable. No more calls, no more hearings. I didn't take it. In my systems, I said, keeping my voice flat, and there's no delete button for the truth. For the first time, she flinched. "This isn't about truth." She snapped, the mask cracking. "It's about survival." I met her eyes. "Then you should have chosen better when it mattered." She pulled the folder back like it burned. The hallway felt smaller again. The air tighter. As if the building itself was listening. "You think this ends with me," she said. "I know it doesn't," I replied. I turned before she could say anything else. Behind me, I heard the folder hit the wall. The sound, sharp and final. My phone buzzed as I reached the door. A message from one of the agents. "We need you again, not for what happened, for what comes next." I stepped outside without looking back. Knowing the pressure hadn't lifted, it had just changed direction. The last call came 2 days later. A familiar voice. Careful again. The company wanted to make things right. Consulting role. Advisory board seat. A clean title and quiet money. They framed it as respect. I listened without interrupting. When he finished, I told him no. There was a pause on the line. The kind that expects negotiation. I didn't give it one. I ended the call before the pitch could restart. I left Arlington that evening with a single bag and no plan to return. Not to that building. Not to that version of myself. The offers kept coming for a while, all dressed up as opportunities, all tied to the same system that had almost buried me when it was convenient. I declined each one. The quiet that followed wasn't empty. It was stable. I slept through the night for the first time in months. I stopped checking my phone every time it buzzed. I didn't feel brave or victorious. I felt clear. A week later, an agent called once more. Not with questions, with confirmation. The case had moved forward without me. It didn't need my presence anymore. That was the moment I understood what I was keeping. The lesson came without ceremony. Loyalty that only flows in one direction is not loyalty. It is leverage waiting to be used against you. If your value disappears the moment you stop being useful, then it was never recognized in the first place. Protecting yourself is not betrayal. It is responsibility. I'm still working. On my terms now. I choose what I touch and what I walk away from. I trust my instincts faster than I trust titles. If you stayed with me through this, why, thank you. I know stories like this hit close to home for a lot of people. If you've been in a room where the air changed and no one warned you, you're not alone. Share your thoughts if you want. I read them. And if you want to keep hearing stories like this, follow along. Sometimes the most important thing we take with us is knowing when to leave.